All right. Well, as I started with, I do student ministries and community groups. So I'm not up here all that often, so I'm going to ask for you guys to help me out just a little bit at the start. Just kind of ease the tension for me a little bit. You don't need to raise your hand or participate too much. Just give me a little bit of a head nod. If you can associate with me and you understand what I'm talking about, for me, there's times in life where when you set out to do something, or when you're in the act of doing something, at the time you think to yourself, I'm doing pretty good. Like, this is working out pretty well. And then later you get older or more mature or space comes or whatever else, and you look back on that same thing and you go, oh, not so much. I don't know why I thought that was good, but that wasn't all that good. I got one nod. You guys are perfect humans. Well, I'm not, so let's switch places. No, but in my life, one of the areas that I see that in myself acting that way is early on in my relationship with Katie, who's now my wife, the relationship that I had with her parents and her sister. Now, I know you guys are like, oh, it's a bad relationship. I wonder why. It wasn't because I was mean or I was a jerk or I was some bad guy or I treated Katie wrong or there was anything like that. The reason that I actually think we had a bad relationship when I look back at it now is actually completely the opposite. It's because I was so incredibly boring and so bland and so vanilla and so just bleh, like Magoo, that I don't think I actually gave them anything to like. And so it wasn't that I did something wrong, it's just that I didn't really give them anything to actually like to build the relationship. And let me explain that a little bit, what that would look like. I would go over to Katie's house and say she wouldn't be ready or she'd be upstairs doing something, and her mom, Pam, would be in the kitchen, and she's always so nice and so gracious, and she would go, hey, Josh, how are you? And I would go, good, how are you? She'd say, good, today I went out and, met up with a friend and I did some of this and now I'm just preparing dinner. Do you want to stick around for dinner? I'd say, yeah, that'd be great. And she'd go, so how was your day? And I'd go, good. Thank you, middle school boy. Zero conversation. And I look at that and I go, man, I did not engage very well and it messed up the relationship. And it actually got more significant than that. At one point, when Katie was down at school in San Diego, her parents took her out to dinner, and during dinner, that conversation at some point led to, Katie, what is the deal with Josh? Does he just not like us? Did we do something wrong? Is there something that happened? Like, what is the deal with Josh that we are where we are? And to illustrate this even more, I am not exaggerating this in any way, I kid you not. At our wedding reception, her father was giving us a toast. And at the start of the toast, he goes, I know that Josh is really quiet and reserved. And over the years, we've kind of gotten to know him. And one of my buddies in the crowd just shouts out, do you even know him? Because I was so different with them than I was with other people. There's some of you in this room that are my community group or know me well or whatever else, and you're like, you're lying right now because your issue is you talk too much. It's not that you're quiet. It's that you just ramble on sometimes. But in that relationship, I was so different with her parents than I was with everyone else, and it was bad for our relationship. Now, thankfully, it still worked out, and Katie and I got married, and we have a good relationship, and it ended up working. But her parents still don't like me at all. I think that's a joke. I hope it is. I'm glad you guys laughed. They're going to listen to this online, so I just want to make sure that got in there. But I look back, and I go, man, that was detrimental to our relationship. And when I look at it, and I ask myself the question, what caused that? Why did that happen? When I try to dissect it and figure out why did I do what I did, the answer to me is incredibly clear. It's because I valued Katie so much. I so badly wanted a relationship with Katie. I had put her in a place where I went, man, she is special, she is something different, and I deeply want a relationship with her. And I still do. But I wanted her so much that what I decided to do with her parents and her sister was this. My one and only goal was this: do not mess it up. No matter what you do with her parents, don't mess it up. Don't cause waves, don't have too many opinions, don't cause any problems, don't put yourself out there, don't do anything that could mess it up, because above all else, do not mess it up, because this is way too important. You've got things way too good. I knew I was playing out of my league, and I did not want to mess it up. And so everything in me was just going, okay, don't mess it up. And I look at that, and I know some of you guys are at the point right now where you're going, cute story, but why are you telling us this? And the reason why is this. I think often we do the same thing in our relationship with God. I would say for most of us in this room, we don't look at our relationship with God and go, it's not that big of a deal. It doesn't have that much of an impact on my life. I would say, on the contrary, most of us in this room actually believe that our relationship with God has more impact on our life than any other thing. And I'm not just talking about heaven and hell and eternity, which is obviously a huge and significant piece, but I think most of us are wise enough to even know the life that I live here and now on this earth, the amount of fulfillment that I'm going to take from this, has more to do with my relationship with God than anything else. And we understand that it's of incredible importance and of incredible value, and there is nothing more important than that. But because it's so valuable, because we want it so much, because it's such a big deal to us, often I think our struggle is this. We put ourselves in a place where we just go, okay, no matter what, above all else, don't mess it up. Do not mess it up. Don't lose God's favor. Don't embarrass who you're supposed to be. Don't do the things that Christians aren't supposed to do. Don't be that person. Just do not mess it up. Get in that little box that you're supposed to be in that's appropriate and right, just like I was with Katie's family. Fit yourself in there. Stay in there. Don't cause any waves. Don't mess it up. Don't be a disappointment to God. Don't let him down. And as I look at that, I look at my relationship with Katie and I go, what the fear was losing Katie. And fear almost always has to do with loss, according to psychology. And so as I look at this in our relationship with God, I go, man, we put so much out there where we go, we just don't want to lose this. We don't want to lose our sense of control. We don't want to lose people's opinion of us. Our reputation can be of such value. The accolades we receive from others, our jobs, our whatever. There's so many different things that we fear. And more than that, I would say we probably even have more fears on the inside than on the outside. The fear that we don't actually measure up. The fear that we've messed up too many times and we've kind of crossed that threshold and we're just going to limp to the end and hope God lets us in or hope things work out, but it's bad and we don't really want to address who we are. Because we have fear of people finding out about all the people that we've hurt, or all the hurt that we have, or all the ways that we've done things we know we shouldn't do, and not just the things that we say we shouldn't do, but the things that we're still doing and the things that we're probably going to continue doing for a little bit. And we don't want to look at ourselves in the mirror, and we don't want to sit down, and we don't really want to analyze, because things may not be great right now, but they're good enough, and we're terrified of all the things that we have to lose. We're terrified of what might happen if. And there's so many ways that we fill in the blank, and so many of us, we fill our lives with it, and we're just fearful. And fear begins to grip us and take a hold of our life, and all of a sudden it starts to take control, and we live this life just based on fear and what if. What if we lose whatever? And it's in that I think we just have a head-on collision with the words of John in chapter 4. If you guys don't remember, we're in this legacy series. And we're looking at the book of 1 John. And John is one of Jesus' original guys. He was one of the 12, and he was a really significant one of the 12. This is now down the road, and he is the only one left. He's the last one. And he's writing this letter to essentially say, okay, pay attention to this. This is what's most important. Catch this. Here's how we're supposed to live as Christ followers. And we take this life where we're gripped by fear and we make so many decisions based on fear and loss, and we run into the words of John in 1 John 4:16, and it says this. And so we know and rely on the love God has for us. God is love. Whoever lives in love lives in God, and God in them. This is how his love is made complete among us, so that we will have confidence on the day of judgment. In this world, we are like Jesus. There is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear. Because fear has to do with punishment. The one who fears is not made perfect in love. Let me read that again. There is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear. And we look at this passage, and then we look at our lives that can so easily be consumed by fear, and it's just a head-on collision. And John goes, that's not how you're supposed to live life. This idea that we shrink back and have this thing of just don't mess it up, don't cause any waves, don't do anything wrong, don't disappoint, don't lose out. And John goes, in no way is that supposed to be there. You're not supposed to live your life in fear. Because perfect love drives out fear. And how does that perfect love work to drive out fear? Because as we talked about earlier, fear has to do with loss. And the beautiful thing about the perfect love and why it has the ability to drive out fear is because if you're a believer in this room and you've said, God, I believe that you want to have a relationship with me, that you love me and that you've pursued me. I've messed it up through sin. I'm asking for forgiveness through your Son, and through your Son's sacrifice for my sins, I now have a relationship with you. And we enter into perfect love from God. And the beauty of it is this. It's not based on your fears. It's not based on what you've done, what you're going to do, or what you're doing right now. It's not based on any of that. What God's perfect love is based on is his love and his desire for you, which is made possible through the blood of his Son. Translation: you cannot lose it. You do not have to fear it because you cannot lose it, because it's not based on you. It's based on his Son, not your actions. And so our option, the way I think about this is we either fill ourselves up with that fear that grips us, or we fill ourselves up with perfect love that drives out all fear. And for me, as I think about that, it becomes an illustration in my head. And over here, we have an exercise ball that is full of air. And what I want is for air to represent fear. So this ball is full of fear. And on this side, we have an exercise ball that is full of water. And I want water to represent God's perfect love. And what happens is we filled this ball with water was all the air was driven out of it. So the fear went out and the perfect love came in. And to me, this is an illustration of the way we get to choose to live our lives. We can either fill ourselves up with the fear, or we can fill ourselves up with God's love. But what I think John's getting at is this. In this passage, when it says, this is how love is made complete among us, what that made complete is actually referring to, or what that means, is when love comes to full maturity in us, or when love does what it has been intended to do in us. Love is complete when it does what it was supposed to do within us. And to me, the illustration is this. When life comes and we're full of fear and something hits us, this is what happens. When we're full of fear and life comes as we know that it will, because life always comes and hardship always comes, and we don't question whether or not that's going to happen, what happens is we go flying off the rails. We lose who we are, identity is lost, our minds are gone, and we go flying to this place of the world is ending and everything is terrible and it's all coming down, and we just lose it. Because we are so full of fear that when one thing hits us, we're just gone. It just engulfs us. But on the other side, when we're full of God's perfect love, which has driven out fear, and the things of life come and they hit us, fear breaks its foot. But when we're full of that love, we're rooted someplace. It's not that fear, or it's not that the hard things in life don't hit us. It's not that hardship doesn't come our way. It's not that difficulties just somehow avoid us. It's that when we get hit, we still know who we are. We still know our identity. We still know what matters most. We are still taken care of, and we're not sent flying off the rails, and we're not completely lost, and our identity is not gone because we're rooted in something that makes us stable and secure. And when we fill ourselves up with that love, it drives out the fear. And to make things even more in our face or uncomfortable, John, in this passage, in verse 17, he says that we will have confidence on the day of judgment. And then he says, in this world, we are like Jesus. And I don't know about you, but for me, that makes me uncomfortable because I read that and I go, no, I'm not, John. That's not true. Because when Jesus was tired and wanted to take a nap and he wanted to go have a conversation with his Father and he wanted to take a rest because he was worn out, and a whole bunch of people that were just needy people came up to him and asked something of him, do you know what he did? He had compassion on them, and he loved them, and he helped them. And for me, when I'm tired and I lay in my bed at night and my 3-year-old, whom I love with all of my heart, comes in and says, Daddy, I need this, or Daddy, I want that, do you want to know what I do? I say, get back in your bed or you're going to be in trouble tomorrow. Get back in your bed or I'm taking away all of your toys. And I look at that and I go, John, I'm not Jesus, you're wrong. And the beauty of this passage is John's not saying your actions in who you are is like Christ. What he's saying is this: you're standing in the eyes of God, the one who's in control, the one who created, the one who has a plan. Your standing with him is the same of that of Jesus Christ. Why? Because it's his love that covers you. So when he looks down and he sees you, he doesn't see you and your mess-ups and your sins and your struggles. He sees the forgiveness that his son put on you, which gives you perfection, which makes you a loved child of God. So you are son or daughter to the Most High God who is in control of every single thing. And how does fear go away? Because we are a child of God and he loves you and he's taking care of you. And that's how we get to the place where in Psalms it says, where, O death, is your sting? What can man do to me? And God says, child, I've got you. I didn't design for you to live this life based on just don't mess it up, be fearful, oh my goodness, you have so much to lose. I'm telling you, I've got you. And I have so much more for you. I have more than you can even imagine for you. And the difference to me is this. God's love comes for every single one of us. That perfect love we're talking about that has the ability to drive out all fear comes for every single one of us, but our choice is what we have to deal with, and it's this. Are we going to fill ourselves up with God's love, or are we going to continue to let fear grip us and be terrified of all the things that we might lose? Are we going to continue to make decisions based on fear? Because as John quoted, or as John said, in this world you are like Christ. As I took a look at Christ, one of the other things that stood out to me is this. I don't think Jesus ever made a decision based on please don't mess it up or fear. There's multiple times in Scripture where you see Jesus with the 12. And they come together and Jesus goes, hey, I think we need to go to this town again because I need to preach the good news there. And the disciples go, yeah, Jesus, that's a good idea. And they need to hear the good news. But let me remind you really quickly, last time we were there, you made everyone angry and now they want to kill you. They actually tried to kill you and they still want to kill you. And their goal is still to kill you. And Jesus goes, yeah, we're going back there. Or all throughout Scripture, where the way to lose your social standing, which was incredibly important in that culture, and the way to lose everything was to do all the things that Jesus did and associate with the Gentiles and associate with all the people you weren't supposed to associate with and have dinner with all of the tax collectors and go hang out with those women and all those other people that you're not supposed to be with because it wrecks everything. And Jesus not only goes and he spends his life with them, he makes a statement to his disciples and he says, you know all those good things that I have for you? You know that love that I offer every one of you? It's not just for you, it's for all of them. Not only am I going to not listen to this idea of be fearful of what culture might say to me, I'm going to go completely against it and love all those that I'm not supposed to love. And John says your standing is like that of Christ. And there's nothing in me that believes we're supposed to live a life where we go, oh man, I'm a follower, just don't mess it up. Oh, I'm going to live by fear and what it could happen if and what will happen when and all those things. And Jesus is going, please let my perfect love drive out your fears. And we don't get rid of that fear unless we replace it with something else. So this morning, I think most of you would agree with me. I would even say all of you agree with me. That a life full of God's perfect love is a whole lot better than a life full of fear. That a life feeling loved and taken care of and secure and rooted is a whole lot better than being afraid of losing everything all the time. But the problem is a lot of us look at this life and we go, yeah, I know this all too well. This can be a much better description of me than that. And we go, I agree that that is better, but the problem is I feel pretty stuck here. So what do I do to get from here to there? Because there is clearly better, but I'm fairly stuck here. And I have three things that I think are extremely key in that journey from there to there. The first one is this. I think we need to be incredibly vulnerable in our relationship with God. Not just coming before God when we spend time with him in prayer or whatever else to say, God, would you please bless this? Would you please give us a safe drive? Thank you for the meal. Lord, please help this person, whatever else. But to lay ourselves completely bare before God and say, God, this isn't just the desired outcome I want or just what I'm thinking about. This is all of me and who I am, the bad, the ugly, the good, everything. I'm laying it all out in front of you. To be incredibly vulnerable with God. Let me give you an example for me for this week. I think this is my third time being up here on stage speaking in front of all of you. And what I've had to realize is this. There's still enough insecurity in me, and whether or not I'm going to do a good job, or whether or not I'll represent this well, or whether or not people will like it, and all of you still being out there, knowing that you're all going to have opinions, there's enough insecurity in me that I've realized, and I'll say this, it's not just insecurity, there's enough insecurity plus selfishness and self-centeredness that I have the ability to come up here on a Sunday morning in this building, on this stage, in front of all of you, and really make this message about what am I going to get from you. Are you going to think I'm funny? Are you going to tell me good job? Are you going to think it was good, but not just kind of good, really good? And if you do, will I go, oh, thank you so much, and act like it doesn't matter, but inside I'll just be eating it up? And I look at that and I go, that is really, really messed up. But it lives in me. And I need to be vulnerable with it. And go, okay, God, as ugly as that is, that's a part of me. And so as I have prayed this week and said, God, would you please give me humility in this? Because I'll tell you this, something that will never be a benefit for a single one of you is someone who comes up here on this stage and tries to give a message where the end goal or the main point is what I can take from you. That will never be a blessing for you. And so I've had to say, God, give me the humility to make this about what you're saying to me through Scripture, to give to them, to hopefully have their relationship with you grow, because that's what this has to be about. And as I was preparing my message, there was times where I said, God, I need your help on this one. And I felt like God was blowing the whistle on me or calling me out on things. And there's stories or jokes that I got rid of because I look at it and go, you know the purpose of that? It was simply for me to get a laugh from you so I could feel better about what I'm doing up here. So get rid of that joke because it's not helpful for where we're trying to go and it doesn't need to be there and it's really just selfish. Step 1. Get incredibly vulnerable with God. Put all of yourself out there. Step 2, remember the truth of Jesus Christ. It is not our history, it is not our actions, it is not the things that we've done. If we have chosen to accept Christ's sacrifice in our life, then our standing is the same as that of Christ. And God the Father, who created the universe, looks down on you and says, you are my child. I love you, and I want the best for you. And I'm going to take care of you. Not because of who you are, not because of what you've done, but because I am your God, and I am madly in love with you. Because of my Son. So you can't lose it. You don't get to lose it because it's my gift and you don't earn it. So accept it. Fill yourself up with it. And remember daily the truth of who you are because of Jesus Christ. And the last thing I would say is this. Take the next step in trusting God. As we work on being more vulnerable, I think vulnerability is one of the best ways to drive out fear. And as our vulnerability rises and we drive fear out, one of the things we usually do next is we begin to trust and take steps with God. And in those actions, in living things out, in doing what He's calling us to do, we begin to develop trust. And every single relationship has to have trust. So take the next step in trusting Him. I believe that every single person in this room has something that God is putting on your heart or is in your head, or somehow you know this is what God is calling me to. For some of you, it might be a whisper that is so faint you're sitting there going, I'm really not convinced this is God. For others, It is resounding in your head, and there's nothing I could say or do to make you believe that that's not God saying something. Either way, take the next step, no matter how big or how small. Take the next step in trusting God. And in that, I wholeheartedly believe that God is going to take this life that we've minimized down and we've dumbed down and we've made it so boring and mundane and lame, and it's just a fragment of what it's supposed to be, and we have so much fear inside of it, and we just go, oh, just don't mess it up. And when we take those steps, I think God is just waiting to go, let me blow the doors off of that thing. Let me break the shackles of that lame, boring little life and show you what I actually have in store for you. You are my child whom I love, and you cannot imagine what I have in store for you. But you've got to trust it and fill yourself up. So what we're going to do right now is I'm going to have the band come out. And as we close, what I want us to do is we're going to sing this song. And it's called No Longer Slaves. And the lyrics go, I am no longer a slave to fear, because I am a child of God. And I want us to spend time thinking about that song and thinking about where we're at this morning, because for some of you, you might be in a place where as soon as I started talking about fear, your mind started running with things that you were full of. And you might need to diagnose and think through and think about, okay, what are some of the fears that absolutely grip me and make me make this choice to live this life that's so small in my relationship with God that I'm just trying to simply not mess it up? And to try to think through, okay, how do I realize that I am a child of God? If you're a believer in this room, how do I fill myself up and actually replace that fear with God's perfect love that drives it out? Because we're not just going to get rid of fear by getting rid of fear. We have to replace it with something else. So band, I'm going to have you guys lead us in that, and I want you guys to take a moment and just realize you're standing as a child of God.